Chapter 19. Across the Frontier. The girl detective had to conquer the urge to crouch down or hide behind the other singers. Any movement she made would make her stand out immediately, and Guterman would be sure to identify her. So instead, she continued to sing to the very last note. But the minute the lights were dimmed for curtain calls, she broke out of the line and raced toward the dressing rooms. Quickly, she wriggled out of her dress into her bathing attire and again slipped the gown over her head. Before the rest of the cast had left the stage, Nancy was out a side door and approaching the water. It was almost as dark as the night itself, and not until she reached the protective shadows of the trees did she dare to remove the dress covering her scuba suit. She joined Eric on the pilings where the inflated inner tubes lay lashed together with cord. Nancy covered her hands and face with the remaining grease paint and waited with Eric for the cast and crew to leave the theater. Above them, they could hear conversation mixed with laughter and footsteps. Then a voice cut through the noise. "Nancy Drew! Has anyone seen her? I have an urgent message for her." Nancy and Eric exchanged glances. "I know it's Guterman. He has an uncanny ability to alter his voice and appearance, but I'm positive it's he." Her companion nodded as the voice called out again. "What does he expect me to do, rush right out and say, 'Here I am'?" Nancy said. "More likely he's hoping somebody else will spot you and say, 'There she is,'" Eric replied. "On the other hand, what if Dr. Bagley is trying to reach us?" "No chance," Nancy said brightly. "Why not?" "Because he doesn't know where we are, remember?" Eric grinned. "You're right." "I only kept this part of the plan a secret to surprise everybody later. Now it's working to our advantage." Although it seemed like hours, probably no more than 20 minutes passed until everyone had left and the theater lights were extinguished. There was silence except for the night sounds of the lake and the chirping and shrill of insects and nightbirds. Then Eric groaned. "What's the matter, Eric?" "The car. It's still there. I left it in plain sight. Guterman will see it. He knows we drove down in a limousine, so he'll know you're still in the area. And he'll go right to the closest Hungarian border crossing and alert the guards. The whole frontier will be onto us," Nancy cried. "We have to move fast." Slipping into the water and pushing the raft of inner tubes ahead of them, they began moving south as fast as they could without making splashing sounds. "I can't see you," Nancy whispered back. "Everything is black on black." "Maybe we should hold hands," the young man suggested. "Well," Nancy said, smiling to herself, "we can always hang on to the string of tubes. As long as we don't lose them, we'll always be together." It was Eric's turn to smile, his white teeth gleaming in the night. "We could," he said, "but it'd be nicer the other way." "Eric," Nancy said, "no offense, but you'll have to keep your mouth closed because your beautiful white teeth shine like a beacon." He chuckled. "Okay, let's go. No more small talk." Half wading and half swimming, they made good time. Nancy estimated their speed at about 1.5 miles per hour, or, roughly speaking, half the speed of walking. Therefore, it would take them approximately an hour to reach the point where they expected to find the Popoffs and the children. Occasionally they stumbled into holes, but soon learned to glide with their feet just grazing the bottom. The shoreline became increasingly swamp-like as they moved into Hungarian territory, and there were few lights to show them where land was. Since it was now close to midnight, most house lights had been extinguished. For a while, the two young people lost their bearings and were forced to stop. "What I wouldn't give for one burst of moonlight," Nancy said. She had no sooner spoken when a tremendous flash of light zigzagged across the sky, followed by a clap of thunder. In the glow that spread over the whole lake, they could see clearly that they weren't far from the twisted tree that Popoff had said was near his hiding place. Are you all right, Nancy? Eric asked. Yes, but scared. I thought they were shooting artillery at us. Give them the signal, Eric went on. Taking out her duck call, Nancy blew 3 short, sharp quacks. There was no answer. She tried again, but still no reply. Should we go up on shore? Eric asked. Nancy was about to say yes when they heard the answering cry of Popov's duck call. Moments later, faint shadows bulked out of the night, and Nancy and Eric waded ashore to meet them. Emil Popov was carrying one child, a 6-year-old. He can sleep through anything, he said, handing the boy to Eric. Be careful when you put him in the tube. The water will wake him, and we don't want him to cry out. Nancy and Mrs. Popov took the other 2 6-year-olds. The older children gathered around Emil Popov, holding onto a rope he carried to keep them together. Eric began speaking softly to the children, paying special attention to the 13-year-old boy who was his cousin. In spite of their joyous reunion, the 2 kept their voices low. Nancy now took charge of painting everyone's faces black. But as she finished, Eric whispered nervously, Listen, everyone be still. The group froze at the sound of several automobiles approaching. Trouble, Mr. Popov said. They're coming. No one else would be coming at this hour. Quickly, quickly. Shoving off and keeping low behind the high reeds that covered the inshore waters, the little convoy began moving north again toward the Austrian border. Car doors opened and closed now, and the loud voices of Hungarian police guards drifted across the lake. They trained their flashlights on the hut where the refugees had hidden, then swung the lights toward the shore. Did they suspect that the escape was being made by water? Would they send out boats? Nancy knew that the Hungarians had small patrol craft, as did the Austrians. But since this was a relatively peaceful border, she hadn't worried about them. The urgency of the situation prompted all of the children, except the smallest, to slip out of the tubes and help push. Each of the older ones stayed close to a younger one, using a buddy system they had devised over months of hiding throughout Eastern Europe. The searchers, running now along the shore, shone their lights out across the water. Stop, Nancy whispered. Everyone halted instantly. The flashlight beams played over and around them, but the darkness of their attire and the cover of tall reeds kept them from being seen. If only it would rain to block their vision, Nancy thought. But the rain didn't come, and the flashlights continued to sweep across the lake. Then, after 10 minutes, drops began to dot the water. Within another minute, a full-scale storm was raging, and the curtains of water made the flashlights useless. Jubilantly, the convoy started moving again. Pushing and swimming as hard as they could, they approached the Austrian border. The flashlights, now dim blobs, receded toward the direction from which they had come. Only 200 yards to go, Eric whispered over his shoulder. Look, Nancy exclaimed suddenly. Lying directly in front of them was a powerful light that attempted to cut through the heavy rain. It was mounted on a small patrol boat. For the first time since their mission began, Nancy wanted to cry. There was no way to tell if it was a Hungarian or Austrian craft in the dark. They were so close to freedom, and the children were so cold from the lake water that they struggled to keep their teeth from chattering. Oh, please help us, Nancy prayed, as Eric moved to her side. I've got an idea, he whispered. I'm going to swim out toward the center of the lake, a few hundred yards or so, then cross to the Austrian side. Then I'll start shouting and screaming like a maniac. The patrol is sure to be distracted enough so you can scoot through with the kids. Oh, Eric, am I glad you dreamed that one up. I just ran out of ideas. Be careful, though. I will. It took the young man 15 minutes to position himself. By then, The rain had slackened, and the light from the boat was scanning the area with such intensity that the little group was forced to wade far back into the reeds and crouch low. Suddenly, Nancy heard Eric. He was whooping and yelling like an Indian tribal attack on a frontier fort. The men in the patrol boat reacted instantly and cruised toward the uproar. Pushing out of the reeds once again, Nancy and the Popoffs covered the final distance of the border in 5 minutes. They didn't stop until they reached the theater. Coming out of the water into the chill night air, some of the children at last began to whimper. The Popoffs went from one to the other, murmuring words of comfort, for they were now safe on Austrian soil. While the couple led the children to the limousine, where warm blankets awaited them, Nancy observed an Austrian patrol boat pull ashore with Eric and 2 Austrian policemen. They wanted to see for themselves if the young man's tale about the refugees was true. Discovering that it was, they saluted and left. Of course, jamming so many people into one automobile, even though it was large and 10 of the occupants small, was no easy task. But nothing could dampen anyone's spirits. Within half an hour, most of the children had fallen asleep. Nancy was surrounded by 4 of the smallest ones in the front seat. "Are you happy, Eric?" she asked. "It's a dream come true," he said. "And may I add that you are fantastic." "Oh, I don't know about that," she said, with a lilt in her voice. "You're the one who really wins the honors. If you hadn't pulled that stunt, we never would have made it." "Aw, shucks," Eric said, imitating the twang of Old West movie heroes. "It weren't nothin'." Nancy laughed, but a sobering thought stopped her. Everything except recovering Kurt Kessler's film had been accomplished. He had risked his life to help save the children, but the young detective's personal assignment to find captive witness had failed. For the rest of the trip back to the hotel, she racked her brain. Was there no way to recover that film? End of chapter 19.